Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, and this is the Piracy Show. Now, okay, so today's show, I think we're going to we're gonna retread some common ground because again, this issue obviously it appears quite often in Spectrum nowadays, and it's popped up again, and some people asked me to kind of wade in on the topic. And you know, I guess going into Spectrum, getting into this argument, and it was about the cockpit views from the Cutlass. And I am going to on this topic, I'm going to say that the Cutlass solves its own problem as it is. I understand, you know, trust me, when we're flying the Cutlass, I totally get it. And I am definitely in the camp that the Cutlass view, if it is intended if it is intended to be flown the way the cockpit is arranged now, then I agree. The cockpit view is a problem. You should be able to see down in front of you to a certain degree, especially when we're now in a game where terrain is an issue, whether in the dark or in the light. Being able to see where you are over the terrain, whether it's an asteroid or a moon or a planet, it's important. I agree. But the fact that there's a flight stick on the back seat tells me that being kind of familiar with attack helicopters and how their cockpits are arranged and whatnot, that the fact that the Cutlass is right now flown from the front seat is something that is going to change. I think that at some point in the future, they are going to either make it so you can flip it one way or the other, or they're going to entirely flip it so the pilot seat is the back seat and the front seat is the co-pilot seat. I honestly believe that when you look at the cockpit arrangement, when you go and you sit in the back seat of the Cutlass and you just look around, whether you're using a look button or in the future, whether you're using Track IR or a VR helmet, you are going to see that the back seat is definitely the superior position to fly the ship from. It has a more commanding view. It lets you see down in front of you. It gives you a much clearer view. And this seat right here, when you look at all these control panels, for a co-pilot, this is ideal. This is absolutely ideal. You can manage all the ship systems at the same time here. You can radio in for a landing. You can manage shields. And oh, by the way, when you see me fly off of the landing pad straight like this instead of flying straight up, the reason why I'm doing that is it's not intentional. It's because I'm still, I am literally at that point going, oh shit, I realize I'm still using my WoW keybinds. And so the W key is making me go forward instead of, flying up. But I digress. So I think that once we get to the point where we can shift those two seats, because once again, that flight stick is there. It wouldn't be that, they wouldn't have put it there if there wasn't a reason for the, if we weren't going to be able to use it. So I think that they are going to open that up and allow you to pilot from that seat. And once that option is open, you're going to see pretty much everybody is going to shift to flying the Cutlass from the back seat instead of from the front seat. I almost entirely guarantee it that once that option is available, people are going to make that change, and even the doubters are going to sit there and they're going to fly it, and they're going to be like, wow, this actually is better. And once Track IR and VR come into the game, it's just going to be default. Everyone is going to do it this way. This is going to be the co-pilot seat, and that's just going to be the way it is. And this is going to be an argument that resolves itself so long as that becomes an option. If you see that flight stick get removed from that seat, that's the point when it's really time to kind of get back into the argument and then start to grind on CIG a little bit and say, yo, you got to go back and look at this because you've made a mistake. Right now, I think that it is going to be an issue that is going to resolve itself, and I think that there's going to be a lot of people out there who are saying, "Oh no, this is fine, this is great." Once it becomes an option, you're going to see them change as well. They're going to be like, "Oh, actually, no, the back seat is totally better." It is. Now, I realize why a lot of people like all those panels down in front of them. I really, really do. I realize because it's there. It looks like something kind of futuristic, and it's familiar, right? It's familiar to us, and it's like, oh, you know, you go into the cockpit of a Cobra attack helicopter, you go to the gunner seat of, that would be more appropriate, the gunner seat of an Apache or the gunner seat of a Cobra attack helicopter. It looks very similar, and you're like, oh yeah, you know, that really kind of makes it look like it's supposed to look. But when you think into the future, when you think 1,000 years in the future, I would argue that MFDs largely would be an anachronism. They would not belong in that future. They would be something that people would look at and go, why? In reality, I think that if we were to go 1,000 years in the future, like right now, if the world is still here, but if we were to go 1,000 years in the future, then there would be no MFDs. That the cockpit would just be a small, smooth arrangement. You would probably barely even notice that it was there, and you would simply have a helmet, and everything would be projected into your helmet, and it would all be controlled by voice command, eye motion, and whatever commands you input through your hands on the control sticks. That would be it. I don't think that a cockpit like this would really exist in the future. I think it would be like almost the Iron Man helmet in a way, where all your information would be displayed as you requested it. I mean, when we get to the point of having voice command, you know, working with our full new UI that we're supposed to be getting at least a part of in 3.1 or 3.1. I think a lot more people are going to be like, yeah, you know what, this actually does make sense. And having that and then having these MFDs, they kind of don't work together. You know, it's in a future where all of that is possible, then why are our cockpits built like something from 20 or 30 years ago? Right? It looks familiar. It looks safe. It looks like something that you immediately look at and you go, yeah, that looks like a cockpit. But this is really like a cockpit arrangement that you would see in a helicopter that was built 30, 40 years ago. Would it exist 1,000 years from now? I say that it would not. This would be something that they would look at and be, no. I want full holographic projection. I want infrared cameras or low light, whatever, projected into my vision, overlaying everything. That's where I think it would be, and it would all be through voice command. Show me my engine, show me my power settings, show me my sensors, show me my radar, show me communications, and they would just pop up on the screen. And as you say, okay, close comms, and then it would just close out and it would minimize out of the way and you wouldn't see it anymore. This is kind of an anachronism. I understand that it's familiar for a lot of people and that's why they like it, but in the future this wouldn't be here. It's kind of contrary to how these ships would perform, and it impacts in a negative way how these ships would perform for no real gain. Considering that, I mean, if you put all this in the helmet, then you open up the pilot's view, you give them more situational awareness, and if the MFDs in the helmet, the displays that you get projected inside your helmet, are damaged or destroyed, then I would argue that at that point, those MFDs are not your biggest concern. If your helmet's been smashed, chances are you're probably already dead. So that's kind of like when you look at the Cutlass, I think that once we have the ability to switch seats, people are going to switch seats and they're going to go and sit in that back seat. And then this is going to be kind of the ship that flips that argument around and makes people kind of go like, actually, you know what? It is better. As the reality of the game sets in and, you know, VR becomes a thing in the game again, and track IR is working for everybody, and people are going to start to really see the need to be able to like look around and to see the things in the universe around them. And I think that especially in the Cutlass, it's going to paint a very clear contrast between good and bad and what should be there and what shouldn't be there. And so as much as, you know, people are still arguing about it and they're getting all like frantic and they're kind of going at it, and some people are making some really questionable posts in regards to the subject, when I look at the Cutlass and I see those two seats and I see that joystick in the back seat, I kind of sit back and I just say, you know what? At some point we're going to be able to sit back there, and this is going to be a situation that resolves itself. I look at it as a battle that has already been fought and won, and it's just a matter of time. Go anywhere else, especially in the bigger ships, go to engineering, go wherever, the weapons room, whatever, and it's all fine. It's all fantastic, and all these MFDs and all these control panels, they're great. They're perfect. 100%, and that's like, I'm not being sarcastic. They're 100% sensible, and they totally, like, I love it. It's a fantastic design. But in the cockpit where it impacts visibility, the MFDs realistically 1,000 years from now have about as much business being in the cockpit as putting a propeller on the nose of your ship. There's no need for them to be there. We know that all this can already be displayed into the helmet. We saw it in the very early iterations of Star Citizen. This is something that is put there for subjective reasons, when logically it wouldn't even be there. So in the end, I think the Cutlass kind of defeats the argument, and once we get to that point where we can sit in the back seat, it's going to more or less put it to rest. So yeah, I think it's something that's worthy of ongoing discussion. Certainly certain fighters are much more impacted than others. I would look at ships like the Buccaneer and the Sabre as being excellent examples of cockpit visibility and design, whereas there are other ships. The Hornet is in a very good spot, I think, but there are other ships that are not. There are certain ships that I think are exceptionally poor. The Retaliator cockpit, for instance, I think is not the best, but I think that, you know, a lot of people have tried to kind of reason this away and say, oh, it's the way different manufacturers would work and that's the way they design it. But you know what, in the end, pilots would speak with their wallets, and these companies, if they kept doing things like this, wouldn't even be in business in the first place. So, you know, once again, discuss it, but I think that once we get to that point, that this ship is literally going to be the ship that killed that argument and laid it to rest. Anyways, that's the show for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.